This evening I'm going to lay some tightly curved track on my model railway in N gauge. How hard can that be? So I need to talk to you about this curve and where I've got to with it. As I've probably explained already, this is difficult because it's very long. It runs all the way around to there before it sort of straightens out to bend the other way. So doing this with a piece of flextrack, I need to get from there to there before I have the chance to join the flextrack on a straight, which is obviously what you want to do. But that loop around there is more than the length of a piece of flextrack, so somehow I have to join it on the curve. And this curve is the tightest curve on my layout. It's 9-inch radius. So I've got to figure out how to do this. Now, if I really can't do this, there is a backup option, which is I can use set track, because set track does have a 9-inch curve, 228 millimeters. But if I do that, then I have to accept I can't join on a curve that tight. When I come to lay my helix, that's obviously even more curves with no straights. Keeps going round and round and round. Now the radius on that is 330 millimeters. So what's that about? It's 11 and a bit inches. So it's more than 9 inches. No, sorry, 13 inches. That's more than 9 inches, so it may be easier to join on the curve, but I want to prove to myself that I can do this before I move on. So I've had several goes at laying this, and this is the current effort. So let me show you. So I've got breaks in the rails, one's there and the other one is a stagger joint, the other one's over here. So that's recommended practice. That means that the unbroken rail supports the one that is broken to prevent it from kinking. I've actually laid this more than once. I think I've laid this particular iteration twice or 3 times, possibly 3 times. One of the things I've done is I've tried to solder the joints to make them stronger. Just there, but that's not been very successful. The most recent attempt was to put the track setter in. So I pulled this section up, put the track setter in to hold it in place, and then glued it down. And that actually improved the situation a lot, but it still wasn't perfect. And in order to get trains to go around nicely, which trains have been doing, going around nicely, but in order to make that happen, I have actually filed the inside edge of the rail here to take the, although there's a bit of a kink there, let me see if I can show you. There's still a bit of a kink. I've filed away the inside edge. However, the outside rail can't be filed away. It somehow needs to be filled in instead. You can see it's obviously out of shape. Perhaps I can show that to you a little bit better. There's an obvious kink in it, and that's causing derailments. That's no good. Now, interestingly, if I take the track setter and I place it back in the rails, you're going to see it doesn't quite fit. A track setter was in there when it glued down, but there you go. See, I'm struggling to fit it back in. I think what that's telling me is that it's obviously moved. Um, since it's been glued down, the track has moved. The glue's latex, it's latex glue, Copydex. Perhaps it's just got a little bit of give in it, and the constant pressure from the rails being in tension has caused it to move. That's going to be a real challenge. So I think this needs to this somehow needs to come up and needs to be done again. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to take out this section here in the middle. There's two rails, one running on the outside there. Oh, sorry, on the inside. That goes all the way up to there, and then the outside rail runs along from here um, around to the other end. So that section in the middle there overlaps. So I'll take it out, and I'm then going to pre-bend the rails. So along the outside here, the section where it overlaps, and also running into that section, I'm going to bend the rails after taking the webbing off first, so that they're not constantly trying to return to a straight position. And then on the other side as well, the same. So this inside rail here will be pre-bent along with the outside one as well. And I can then put it back together. I've got to feed these rails here back into the webbing after I've taken it apart. And hopefully that'll take the edge off the tension. Over here, I've got a rail. What I was trying to do is create a short length about that long of track that bends, and bends tight, maybe even as tight as this, within my point work. Now that's hard because obviously there's nothing either side to hold it in position apart from the points, and if this pulls out of place, then I'll get derailments and so on. And especially on the edge of points, you have to use insulated rail joiners, and they're made out of plastic, and that's going to cause them to that's not going to mechanically hold the rails together quite as well as the metal ones do. So what I did is I got a piece of track this long, about right, and then I manually removed each of the rails, and I just bent them in my hand. You just use your fingers, put a bit of pressure, and just work your way along. Just gently put a curve in, and you can go up and down as many times as you want to make it more and more curved until you get it right. Of course, luckily I've got a track setter, so I can use the track setter to measure the amount of curve that I've put in it. And once I've curved each of the rails satisfactorily, and in particular made sure I've curved all the way to the end, I can then feed these rails back into the sleepers, into the webbing. And I've then got a short piece of track that long that'll hold its curve. So I'm just trying to replicate that idea on either end. Oops, focus. On either end of these longer curves, so I can get them to join together. So that's the plan. I need to remove the droppers that I've soldered on here. I'll take these bits of track up, clean up the cork, because I know all this latex glue is going to want to come off, and have another go. Well, that's come up nicely. There's a lot of glue left on the cork. Because it's sort of rubbery, you can grab the end of it and pull it up. So I don't want to destroy the cork. So I've got to be a bit careful. But I think I might clear all the glue. We'll see. Anyway, I just wanted to show you, having pulled it up, it naturally straightens out the track. If I bend it around and it just wants to be straighter, it doesn't want to be bent this tight. So that's I'm obviously fighting it, but I think I can make this. I think I can make this work. Okay, get it in focus. Let me just show you though. This is the great thing about the copy decks. Is there's a pen there. Oops. Here's a great thing about the copy decks is you can just pull the track off. So it holds it pretty firm, but it's very easy to get the track up afterwards. Right, time to start working on the join. I'm obviously going to have to make some changes around here. It needs to take this bit of webbing off and bend the rails. So I've taken some webbing off. Obviously this part here is for the overlap, and this part here I'm going to put back on to hold these two rails together. But you can see I've tried to bend both the rails manually. It's not brilliant. Here's my track setter, but it's around about the right sort of curve that I need. Certainly that one. Let's have a look, maybe that one as well. And it just takes the edge. Well, hopefully it'll just take the edge of it constantly trying to pull itself into a kink. Anyway, I'll put the webbing back on and see if that works. Here I'm bending the individual rails on the end of this piece of track. You can see I've done the inside one. And I can take the track setter and just pop it in there. Oops, let's do this. Pop it in there. Now this section of track with the webbing, that the rails haven't been bent, so that naturally wants to straighten out. But the track setter sits in there, and you can see that this part that I've curved sits quite nicely along the edge of the track setter. So I'm quite happy with the amount of curve on that. I've just got to do the long one now. Once I've bent it, it should on its own hug the edge of the track setter without being held in place. So I'll give that a go. There we go. That's got a curve on the rail there. It's not perfect, but the point is that on the end here it won't be pulling the edge of the joint this way. It's naturally bent round, and when the webbing goes back on, it should on its own hold that curve. Right, I think now time to put the two ends back together now. So I've put the webbing back on. Perhaps you can see it's got a bit of a natural curve now, this section, although there's nothing holding it on the end. It's not glued. I've just put these 3 clamps on just to rough it in place, make sure that it connects at that end, and you'll see that's not quite right, but that's fine. I'll pin it along the centre line. I just want to make sure I've got the rail lengths correct, and the amount of webbing correct, so there's room there for a joiner, but I don't want a big gap unnecessarily. So that's all good. So the next bit is to feed on a bit of webbing for the centre and feed in the other end of the track, and then hopefully it's all going to line up and join up. So you can see I've fed the webbing back onto this one rail. Got a rail joiner on the other side ready to receive the other rail that will be fed in. but in particular you can see the way in which it's holding its curve. I'm not having to force it onto the centre line, it's holding it there by its own strength, because there's a bit of a natural curve now in the rail. So if I feed the other rail in, it should all hold together without putting any kinking stress on the joints. So I'm very nearly there. You can see that I've threaded the second rail in through the webbing in the middle. Just got this clamp here just to hold that end of the track in place, because none of it's glued yet. And you'll see I've got a fish plate there, so I've just got to feed this rail onto the fish plate. And on the other side, just here, you'll see I need to add another fish plate. So hopefully if I can get that done, I can then close it up. I may need to slightly trim the length of one of these rails just to make it all fit, but it's all looking pretty good. And if we look at the rest of the track, it's generally that piece and that piece generally curved in the right direction, so I'm not expecting much movement to be necessary, just in the lengths just here. I think I'm almost there. I've managed to get fish plates in both ends, and I've put the track setter in to hold it in shape. And this is the key thing, I can slide the track setter around it very easily. Now I've never been able to do that before. Normally I can get the track setter in there, but the rails are in so much tension that they hold it completely still. So that's a really good sign. If I take the track setter out, you can see it's slightly trying to open up there, so that needs to be held back, but the glue can do that. But I think it's certainly in much better shape than I've ever had it before. All because I've put that bit of curve into the individual rails. I've got to glue it now. There's no glue all the way from here all the way around. The problem here is getting the glue. I mean, now I've sort of got it in shape, I don't want to take it to bits. So somehow I've just got to lift up each section, and get the glue underneath. And then I will be drilling a hole and using my push pins to hold it in place while the glue goes off. No, but I'm really pleased with this now. I just need to close up that rail joint a bit, but I think I can do that by manipulating this piece of track. If I bend it a bit in various ways, eventually I might be able to work this outer rail along a millimetre or two. I think I've done it. I've managed to close up the gap there with that rail. There we go. And I've also managed to close up the gap. Can we see it? Just there. That rail. I've put some glue on that section to hold it, but actually I think just before that fully sets, I might just get some glue under this join as well, and then I can clamp it all down. I think I've managed it. Taken the clamps off that side, glue's still got to fully dry, but I think it'll hold the track in place at least. I've got the track setter in across the join just to hold the curve in the right shape across that join, and obviously that's clamped down nice and firm. And then with the rest of this section, that's clamped down, held in place. So I am pretty hopeful that this is going to work. I've just got to wait for it to dry, and then we'll try and run a coach round, see what happens.